You are listening to the CAD Call podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentech Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The CAD Call podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the CAD Call podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentech Consultants. I am Jim, your infectious disease vector of a host today, and with me, as always, is my partner in crime,
Rocco, and just stay away.
Just stay away.
Stay away from this guy.
There's a good reason why we record in different offices. It works. So I won't get you sick, but it still won't save you from the important part of the day, which is the engineering joke of the week. Are you ready for this one, Rocco?
I'm ready.
Okay. So this one works out perfectly for today's guest. Why don't civil engineers like to build tunnels?
I don't know. Why?
It's boring. Huh?
Oh,
there
God.
you go. Just awful. What an awful joke. All right, folks. So today we have a pair of guests on the show who have very quickly become fan favorites. Ramesh Sridharan, the director of AEC Building and Infrastructure Design from Autodesk, is here, along with Michael Davidson, who is the product manager for BIM and CAD Integrations at ESRI. And both of them have been here before, but yet they still agreed to come back on the show, so they get no sympathy for me for being here. But gentlemen, it is a pleasure to have you both back here once more.
Absolutely, Jim. Honored to be here.
Yeah, great
honored
to be here again.
See, look, people like to talk to me, Rocco. It's not like you say, like I'm annoying.
No, I think they come back because of me, not because of you.
Probably true. I can't really argue that one.
I know you're recording, Jim, so.
That's it. Rocco likes to get it into the recording, so he thinks he has friends. But that's all right. All right, so I tell you what. Before we get into the show today, let's get a little bit of info from each of these guys, all right, to give them a little refresher for those of you who don't remember them. So why don't we start with Ramesh? What can you tell folks about all of the cool stuff that you get up to over at Autodesk?
Cool stuff at Autodesk, huh? We get sabbatical, if that's cool enough.
Sabbatical is very cool. I want one of those.
No, man, life is great at Autodesk. So I do multiple things over time. So I lead the Reality Solutions team. The team is located in Singapore and UK, so it's fun jumping out of the time zone. But since working with a good team, it's always fun. And I also lead the ESRI integrations with the increasing integrations from not just my division, even across Autodesk with ESRI. I get a chance to work with a lot of great folks across Autodesk, which is really cool. And on top of that, I get to interact and learn a lot from smart folks like Mike from ESRI. So what honor that is. So no complaints at all. That's what I do at Autodesk.
Not a bad deal. I like it. All right, so Michael, what about you? What can you tell folks about your life over at the ESRI side?
Yeah, so I figure I gave my whole life story on my first episode with you all. I shortened it up for this go-around. So I have a civil engineering background, and back in 2019, I took part in this BIM for Bridges project and just got obsessed with the concept of interoperability, that you could pass data back and forth instead of recreating the models over and over in different tools. And a few years later, saw this in 2023, saw this opening from ESRI for a product manager that's not just BIM integrations, but this kind of trifecta of interoperability across GIS and BIM and CAD. And so here I am 2 years later, and as a product manager working for ESRI, my role is to understand those workflows of GIS teams and design teams and engineering teams, and increasingly others, like field teams maybe, that need to use each other's data and really for each one of those dig into their frustrations and try to take that back in a synthesized way to the ESRI development team and work with folks like Ramesh to enhance our software and smooth out those data flows between those teams that are working with ESRI and Autodesk tools.
Okay. So you guys just talk with a couple of people now and again. Not a lot, right?
Just a few.
No worries. That's awesome. All right. So today I want to get into kind of the blending, I guess, of design and GIS data, right? And the processes and how Autodesk and ESRI are leading that charge. And I want to focus on the tools that, our listeners can use to integrate GIS data while actively working on DWG design files and tools like Civil 3D and AutoCAD, and vice versa. You can go the other way too. And that overlap, right? And the way that both of these companies have partnered to make those workflows blend together, you kind of, instead of fighting each other, I think it's a massive benefit to all of us. And I want to get our resident experts here to kind of tell us the best ways to make all of that happen. So Ramesh, where do you kind of see the key benefits for our listeners, right, working in the design drafting space to integrate GIS into their workflows?
Sure, man. I mean, the obvious thing is getting the GIS data into a design. But if you fundamentally see beyond GIS and design, I see it as an existing conditions option. If I'm a designer working in a Civil 3D, for example, and I'm obviously creating a new design for a problem in hand, to do that, I need to know what is out there right now. Maybe it's a surface or the water flow or the hydro flow or the floodplain details, substructure, assets, roads, rails, power line, more, you name it. But as a designer, I need to have access to that so that to make my works easier, better and efficient, but most importantly, make my decision making better and efficient. So that existing conditions is kind of vital for me when I start the design project, during, and even trying to complete it. I would like to make sure it works with what else exists around there, right? So that's where the GIS data come very handy. To fill in those gaps, I'm using the word gaps loosely here because not just the gaps, they give a pretty much a lot of outside information. Given that whole project view with the necessary details is so valuable, and it's a big contribution to the success of a infrastructure design project. That's why I see it. The valuable GIS data coming in as an existing conditions accessible to a designer is a key for the success of the infrastructure projects.
Yeah. And I will say I think you nailed that exactly on the head, right? Coming from my background, which is in that, Civil 3D infrastructure design space, that's exactly where GIS was always vital for me.
Yep.
So Michael, on your side, right? What about from the ESRI GIS user, right? How do you guys see them benefiting from this integration between Autodesk and ESRI?
Yeah, so trying to get specific here on this one and really stick to the benefits to the GIS users. So, for any of these projects we're trying to build or maintain something, we see that the GIS teams can be pretty small, and the design teams, the engineering teams, they can be pretty large relatively. So these GIS teams get hit with, they receive, tens or more of these evolving CAD files, these DWG files, and at the same time, the GIS team is still responsible for packaging all of those DWGs with other types of information coming from Revit or other spatial data. And they got to do it in tools that are pretty sophisticated like ArcGIS Pro so that they can do spatial analysis, but also so that they can package all that information up and share it out into these big, rich 3D scenes so that project managers and other folks can do project coordination. But if those CAD files, for example, don't use real-world coordinates, if they don't have a coordinate reference system assigned, then what happens is the GIS team gets them, and then they have to play detective. They have to manually georeference each one of the assets that they're trying to package and federate together before they can even start on their spatial analysis or get started on sharing out the latest design in a contextual kind of backdrop so that, say, the project manager can actually do some coordination with. So through our integrations with Autodesk and through some best practices, the GIS teams can rest a little bit easier that the DWGs they're receiving for anything that's getting built or maintained, it's going to show up in the right spot when they're packaging all together, and that you can even have the underlying parameters so that the GIS attributes be intact when it's read in, so that the GIS team could just get on with their workflow for analysis and sharing out.
Okay, nice. And you know what? I think everybody listening, y'all need to listen to what both Ramesh and Michael just said. Whether you're an architect, a civil engineer, I don't care what you're doing, please don't work in random coordinate systems. Please put things into the real world space because it makes everybody's life so much easier when you're geolocated. So here's my 2 cents for the day. So Rocco, let's wake you up over there where you're napping, right? So look, we don't actually sell Autodesk or ESRI, as a software, but we work a lot on the support and tech service end for our users who have both of those systems. Is this integration between these two products important to users in their kind of purchase and development decisions?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, Jim, right? We're Procore certified consultants and just talking about how the integration of products and making them work well together is important for daily workflow. When systems don't integrate with one another, it just makes everybody's life more difficult. And so in this scenario, and I'm hearing a lot of people that are really excited about the ESRI Autodesk partnership. It's making your life easier, and that's what we're all looking for.
Yeah, I mean, in the modern era, it's 100% about integration and being able to share data and not fight back and forth, right? And I think you guys are doing a great job with that. So,
sorry, Jim, and also like Rocco was saying, the customers also have different products already, right? And they have the system, they have the data stored. Having a seamless workflow solution makes that process much easier and stuff. They can actually leverage more out of what they already have. It's actually even more powerful.
Yeah, that's vitally important, and that's that's a huge part of our sales pitch as technology consultants here at Zentek, right? That we're always working with people to say, look, you've got programs, you've got data, you've got information. It's about making the systems talk together, which a lot of companies resist that. And like I said, I know every time you guys are on, I talk about how great this is that you guys work together as partners. It makes the end users' lives so much easier. So Teo, let's talk a little bit about a few of the specific tools, I guess, that you guys think are important for our listeners to be aware of, right? There are always features in these systems, right? They're big, powerful systems, both of them, that just get overlooked by a lot of users, right? That can actually have really hugely positive impacts on their daily work processes. And I kind of want to know which ones you want to make sure that everybody listening at least takes a few minutes to get familiar with and look at. So Michael, let's start with you, right? What tools from the ESRI side do you think that people really need to take a closer look at?
Yeah, so ESRI has a lot of products. I'd mentioned project managers before. ArcGIS GeoBIM is really geared towards helping those types of folks, and we're trying to grow over time to help out more and more roles. We have an integration coming up in 2025 for Autodesk Forma that's going to help out urban planners and architects. But for today, we already kind of started in on a little bit of focus of the drafters, the folks who are building up our DWG files, and for those from the ESRI side. We developed a tool called ArcGIS for AutoCAD, and it helps CAD teams across a couple of different workflow patterns. They can contextualize their drawings and designs, maybe planning early design. A second pattern is they can pull GIS data into their drawings, they can edit it and then synchronize back up and maintain a centralized environment, during phases of design and construction, for example. A third pattern is you can actually create and publish GIS content from CAD for activities like as-builting, for example. So ArcGIS for AutoCAD, it brings map and imagery and GIS features from your organization's cloud, or if you have on-prem servers, into AutoCAD or Map 3D, maybe Civil 3D. And it's a no-cost plugin. You can get it from the Autodesk App Store. You can get it from ESRI's site, along with videos and get started content. And for today, the marketing folks did do something kind of fun. And for any listeners out there, you can actually download it from go.esri.com/CADDLE AFA. So CADDLE AFA. So
Nice.
Thought that was a fun little trick for today.
That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate that. Didn't even know you were going to do that. See there? We're important. They give us special offers just for us. I like it.
Yeah.
Ramesh, right? Let's kind of ask you the same question, but from the Autodesk side, right? Which tools do you think that people on the Autodesk side of the house need to use more to get the best results from this ESRI Autodesk partnership?
Absolutely. By the way, that's a cool stuff, Mike. We need to get the URL also. Yeah, that's a nice one.
Thanks.
He showed you up to Ramesh. You didn't bring nothing to the table like Michael did. I'm just saying.
I got to put 2 characters now on the URL to amp it up.
There you go.
From the Autodesk side, well, before I say anything about the tool, one thing I'll ask the customers, the audience, listening to this podcast, and everyone they're referring this podcast to is, whenever you're working on a workflow, especially in this case, civil engineering workflows, right? If something is hard for you to get to do, just stop for a minute or so, look for a solution. There's something Autodesk and ESRI or just Autodesk or just ESRI, they're always coming up with something that might help you. Sometimes you're working on the existing workflow for a long, it becomes tedious, it becomes handy, but there are better ways always to do it. So we are really working hard to release those things and also willing to talk to you and make that happen also. And exactly like what Mike mentioned, AFA is one such fantastic tool that gets you the data, GIS data into it. And on the Autodesk side, we have something called Connector for ArcGIS, which is basically connecting to ArcGIS Online and the portals to get your existing conditions. Like I mentioned before, get to your civil 3D drawing and designing and get you going. Like, for example, one feature in that one is what we call as a custom stylization. It so happened that I was talking to a customer this morning, and I got he mentioned that he got an email from one of his coworker, how fantastic that feature in the tool was, where they can stylize, when you get the existing conditions into civil 3D drawing, you work with it. It's very glossed over way of saying that, right? But if you're a designer, you get the GIS data, it has to come in the way you want to use it, right? Because in the middle of the project, now you have to sit in stylization, do this and that and all those things. Then you end up taking more time on preparing it. If I'm the user, well, it takes time to do it. I'll do something else next time or something different next time. We try to break that mundane work of doing it, make it automated. And that's what the stylization does. You set it up previous hand, how you want the data to come in. So when you add that layer, it fits exactly the way you want with the color coding, the feature lines, or the groups, or line groups, or point groups, or whatever. So as a civil engineer, you continue working on your design without a break, just with the new data and make it more efficient part. So that's one such feature in Connector for ArcGIS, but there are a lot of many features in Connector as well as in AFA to get your job done. So when you get a chance, check it out, especially when you're working with the GIS on the Autodesk side or the civil information for the GIS side. Just reach out to us or just look into it. There's always something better way to do and better tools available.
Yeah, that's a great and important safety tip, right? And we all fall into that trap, right? We find the way that we do things, we know it works, and we just keep doing it without taking a few minutes to just look once in a while and say, hey, is there a better way? That's a great tip. All right, I tell you what, folks, let's take a quick break here to get to today's sponsor in, and then when we get back, I want to get into the specifics on some of the important integration tools for design in GIS and what they're going to look like as we move into the future. All right, so come on back, folks. We'll be back in a minute with more of the Cattle Call Podcast. Hey, everybody, it's Jim and Rocco from Zentech Consultants. And we wanted to talk to you guys today about Managed CAD Services by Zentech Consultants. Look, every one of us out there in the design space, we're looking for that power person who can handle all of your standards and templates and file structures and answer all your CAD problems. But we run into two big issues. Number one, those folks don't come cheap, especially when you start adding in all of the taxes, insurances, and time off and stuff you got to add in. And then you've got to find someone that you can trust. And that's where Zentech Consultants come in, because I got to figure you guys are listening to us every week talk. You got to trust us. And we come in and handle all your CAD management needs for you with our Managed CAD Services contracts, an annual contract where we can be your CAD manager, doing all the things that you need done for an affordable rate with people whose technology acumen you know and trust. So Rocco, why don't you tell folks where they can find out more about Managed CAD Services and get the ball rolling?
Yep, you can hit up our website, zentechconsultants.net, and if you go under the services section, you'll be able to see the details. You could also give us a call, 866-824-4459, or drop us an email, sales@zentechconsultants.net.
There you go. All the CAD management help that you need but have not been able to get is available with Managed CAD Services by Zentech Consultants. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cattle Call Podcast. We're talking with Ramesh Sridharan of Autodesk and Michael Davidson from ESRI about the GIS design integration tools and features today. And we discussed some of the most important tools for these two systems in the top half of the show. And on this side, I'd like to get into some of the details about the integration process, I guess, across a number of tools. So Ramesh, let's start with you, right? You talked earlier about a few ways that folks can use the integration tools for design. Can you get a bit more into the differences, and particularly where you see the Autodesk connector for ArcGIS and Civil 3D kind of being the most effective for people?
Absolutely. Mike and I talk about this a lot, actually. We both, and especially our teams, are working on the features and tools to address the problems we see our users go through. We talk to our customers in the conferences or everywhere we meet, and we find the problem points and find a way to implement them. And some features are straightforward to do in a Civil 3D plugin, some are very straightforward in ESRI tools. But when you focus on the features, even though it is straightforward for us, not same for the customers, right? So they feel like two different tool buttons or two different plugins or something. So we always give this message of intent to provide the clarity to the users so that they can use a preferred tool for the job in hand. There's nothing hard and fast rule. We just tell them what the way it is, and so that they can use what they like. From the connector perspective, the simplistic way I can put it is as a civil engineer, see this as a civil engineer persona looking for a way to get existing conditions of a GIS data for my design and modeling. It has ways, the connector for ArcGIS has a ways to get as a civil objects, like I mentioned before the break, custom settings so that you can actually get in the way you want to. And I'm an engineer by myself, so I understand the way the engineers want the data, get on with the job and things like that. That's what the connector does. So that actually helps you and get your job done. And those settings are meant to do it that way, so that helps a lot. And on top of it, you connect it to your back to your ArcGIS Online or the portal to make sure there's a source of truth is common throughout your org, throughout your project and things like that. So you're not missing out on the GIS side, but think as a civil engineer persona, getting the GIS data. That's where the connector kind of plays a big role in a nutshell.
Nice. All right, so Michael, kind of on your end, right? We've talked a lot, both today and on previous episodes when you were on, about the Civil 3D integrations with ESRI, or with GIS rather. But ESRI's plugin works well inside of just basic AutoCAD as well. What are kind of the workflows and benefits that you see for your ESRI users in that package?
Yeah, and I would like to echo some of the things that Ramesh said. We talk about this a lot. ESRI and Autodesk are strategic partners, and it does come down to just what is your persona, what is your workflow, and what's the best tool that works for you. And I think we both strive for, at a high level, whether we're talking about the connectors or ArcGIS for AutoCAD, we just want to let these CAD teams for us, maybe the civil engineers for more on the Ramesh's side, participate in these GIS processes, but not get in the way of their normal picks and clicks. So at that level, it's really a unified goal, I would say, for my part. For ArcGIS for AutoCAD, it's a little more specific to our plugin. We do lean into the more GIS-centric aspects of working with AutoCAD points and lines and polygons, and some of those examples of those, just GIS-intensive aspects is the plugin supports things like multi-user editing workflows. So you can have multiple CAD team members, or even your CAD and your GIS team members operating on the same layers of those points and those lines and those polygons at the same time. One recent example is we recently teamed up with another ESRI team to get a blog out on managing tax lot lines in a subdivision. So you could have the CAD team take on adding the geometry, updating the geometry, that behind the scenes, it's upholding what's called the ArcGIS parcel fabric data model, and those layers on the CAD side, kind of unbeknownst to the most part to the drafters, are branch versioned over in the GIS. And so the CAD teammates, they're just doing their geometry picks and clicks, but when they hit synchronize, all that goes up into the GIS and it preserves that data model needed for the ArcGIS parcel fabric. And then the GIS team, they can just reconcile those branch version layers over in the GIS and incorporate those changes into that official parcel fabric. We also have some tool sets that help prep floor plan drawings before they're passed in over to the GIS teams for wayfinding and space management through a product called ArcGIS Indoors. And then a little bit more broadly to get back to, well, how are we helping these CAD technicians, for example? Well, there are some integration features in the plugin for things like labeling and civilization, for example. You can dynamically link CAD labels to GIS attributes. And so you're in AutoCAD, for example, and you're just using normal picks and clicks to update text, but behind the scenes, the GIS attributes are updated for the corresponding annotated points, lines, and polygons. So you can do things also like symbolize GIS points as CAD blocks, and you can automatically populate block references with GIS attributes. So like I said, we lean into those kind of GIS-centric concepts and really do focus on that point line polygon type activity in tools like AutoCAD.
That's really nice. I mean, there's a lot of functionality that, for a very long time, right, folks on just plain AutoCAD side really just did not have access to. So yeah. I think it's really important. Awesome. So Rocco, when you're talking to our clients, do you see more of them kind of working, with the GIS for AutoCAD, or are they still kind of focused primarily on dealing with it in the infrastructure space?
A little bit of both, a little bit, I guess, because we work pretty heavily with Civil 3D folks and training and consulting services. It's a little bit more on the infrastructure side, but we definitely talk to folks that are looking for that AutoCAD integration as well.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, it's a little bit newer, I think, in most people's mind, but I've been seeing the same thing. People are moving in that direction, starting to recognize the potential there, even with just basic AutoCAD. So look, as I have said multiple times, both today and in other shows, I think that this partnership between Autodesk and ESRI is the guide that all software developers should be using to grow their client base. Working together instead of fighting and undercutting each other to pull clients away from each other. I have seen adoption of both of these products grow substantially since these companies teamed up. And I'm really excited to see, where they can lead the industry, right, as they kind of move forward with this strategic partnership together. And I'm also hoping that since we got these really smart guys on the show who know what's going on, that they can give us a sneak preview on where they are headed together. So Ramesh, what does the future of this partnership hold for the Autodesk base?
Sure. Actually, you nicely mentioned, Jim, that a lot of stuff we work together as an Autodesk ESRI is a fantastic partnership. And the one other way I actually see that is you can, when we started, like 5 years back, maybe 6 years back, that time is more like people are looking at like a different fancy way of importing the data. Then they start seeing the tools coming together, then the partnership. So it takes some time for customers and users to, acknowledge that two big companies coming together and do stuff like that. But more importantly, you can also see around the industry and other players in infrastructure project, as well as geospatial products, trying to catch up with what Autodesk and ESRI partnership been and offering. In my opinion, that's great because it confirms two things. That confirms the path we've been taking and the direction we are going are the right ones. We are actually solving the customer problems. And it's not just moving the product or the company, but moving the industry as a whole. At the big picture, the whole industry is moving forward. Everyone has a business. How we can make the customer's life easier. So in that way, how things coming together is fantastic. But sometimes whatever big we think, we are talking about the tools and features. But there are tools and features after all. But in a big scheme, I always equate to this, even I say this to my team, it's like how a small key in your pocket can unlock a lot of big rooms. Similarly, a small feature, small tool, small plugins, it may look like a small or something, but what it can unlock for our customers, how much they can gain out of it, that's huge. And especially when Mike and I talk to our customers, when we hear them, obviously hear them giving a lot of constructive feedback, but also appreciate what we've been doing, that's a great thing. And we have continued that trend too. So moving forward, we're having some great discussions on a little bit beyond the tools and stuff, leveraging existing conditions beyond feature lines and rasters, and also seamless interaction of the reality capture data and things like that. And I think Mike already touched a little bit, cohesive BIM and GIS collaboration, all with an eye of solving users' problem, both today and 5 years down the road. Because when you start working on these tools, customers may be using these tools a year or two, or depending on the customer cases. So we need to keep the future in our eye while solving today's problem, so that we can meet both, and that's where customers and their time's going on, right? And this is where we have a lot of ideas. We're working with it. This is where I wish we had a magic ball, because we are hearing. We have a pretty good idea, but hearing from the customers, hearing from the users who are doing hands-on with a similar mindset will be of great help. Now, we don't want to be a mad scientist, cook up something in the basement and unveil that to release what the customer should do. That's not the way industry works anymore. The customers are very smart. They have practical problems. So we want to be a sane and practical scientist, work on hypothesis, discuss with the folks like you guys are the people who work on hands-on and experience it and give us a feedback. What was the famous fourth stage? The customer will ask, if I ask the customer, they would say faster horses. He built a car. I think that's a fourth statement, right? But nevertheless, if you think about it, customers are right. They want a faster medium of transportation, and that's what we intend to catch, and that's what we run with it. Some of the examples I showed before is kind of moving towards in that direction in the future.
Nice. I will say, if you do need like a magic 8-ball, you can use Rocco. We both have bright, shiny, bald heads. You can just polish us up and look and see what everybody needs in the future, Ramesh. So,
how do you think we got here?
Fair enough. There you go. See, that's why he keeps coming back on the show, so we can look in our heads to see what tomorrow will bring. So, Michael, what about the ESRI people out there? Right? Where are you guys planning on taking them with this partnership?
Yeah, so it was for, I don't know, whether you're a GIS analyst, a civil engineer, a project manager, field crew, CAD tech, on and on and on. There are all these roles that need to come together anytime we're trying to build or maintain something. And, what we want to do over time is make it easier and easier to collaborate on the GIS, the CAD, and the BIM data. And I was really excited I think Ramesh echoed that kind of same phrase. It's just really making it easier is a hot theme for us right now, so that all those different roles can collaborate, but do it from their familiar tools. And so, some of the things we're trying to do from the ESRI side is, for example, help bring location information into a wider variety of those players when we're trying to build something. I mentioned earlier there's that integration for Autodesk Forma coming up in 2025 that'll help get context. Sure, that's very valuable to the folks using it, but it'll also make sure a little bit more that location information gets into these CAD and BIM data sets earlier. Revit, for example, could inherit from Autodesk Forma, for example. So that Autodesk Forma is a big effort for us in 2000. That integration into Autodesk Forma is a big one in 2025. And I know throughout today we've talked quite a bit about how CAD teams, how civil engineers can benefit from bringing GIS into AutoCAD and Civil 3D. And regardless of which tools being used there by those teams, and again, Ramesh and I really, I think, are unified in just looking for opportunities to make it easier. For example, there's all these layers out there from the GIS. How can I find the ones that are most helpful to me and add it into my drawings, for example? Can I rest easy? I've got a local coordinate system. Can I rest easy that the stuff's going to coming from the GIS into my drawing is going to show up in the right spot? And so we definitely want to focus in on those areas to just make it easier to have that data flow, I guess I would say.
Nice. And, I have to say, I think, having guys like you and Ramesh kind of leading that is very important. I think it's something that does happen quite a lot in the software development. I don't know how it works on the back end. Maybe you guys see it a little bit clearer than I do, but a lot of times I see people putting in features and functions and they're just throwing more and more and more on top. And nobody ever stops to say, how does this make the end user's life easier? That simple question, I think that's just invaluable. I think it's the right approach that you guys are taking. All right, folks. So, as always, when I have guests on, I like to let them talk about something that I didn't ask about, so that we can learn all the good stuff. So Michael, what else do you want folks to know about from the ESRI side that I didn't think to ask you about today?
Yeah, and I guess we've developed a theme here today where we're talking about, at least for mine, really how are we helping these CAD and GIS teams have a little bit of an easier daily life. And so just one more benefit that I would like to share comes down to increasing the awareness and the empathy that engineers and CAD technicians, for example, can have for all of those project stakeholders that have to inherit your work, your valuable decisions you've made in your design for your roadways, or your parcels, or your pipe networks, or your points, lines, and polygons. All that line work, when you hand off that DWG, when you close your session and say, "Hey, I'm finished, going on to the next one," there's a lot of value in that. And it goes back to what we were saying a little bit earlier, Jim, is get those real world coordinates in there, get those coordinate systems into those drawings, because it's really going to help everybody downstream from you be able to do their job instead of having to play detective, for example. And I've seen it firsthand. I know Ramesh has as well, and it's such a cool feeling. You're on a call with a customer, they're using Autodesk connectors, or they're using ArcGIS for AutoCAD, and it starts to increase that awareness and that empathy when they have those first successes of, "Oh my gosh, I just changed this line in AutoCAD and I'm seeing it up in the web map," and they start to say, "Wow, my work does go somewhere else." So, I do see these integration tools making very real to CAD teams that they can not only benefit from information gathered upstream for their work, but that their designs in AutoCAD and Civil 3D, they don't cease to exist when you finish your drawing. That information has a value and a need for lots of other project teams.
Nice. Excellent point. All right. So Ramesh, what about you? What other cool Autodesk info do you want to share with the listeners today?
Sure. I already told about sabbatical, right? That's pretty much
Yep,
it.
that's in there. That's it. It's the only thing that's cool about Autodesk.
One cool stuff. I would say this. The Autodesk, same thing as ESRI for that matter. People think it's a big company works. The things move a little slow and all those stuff. In some level, they're not wrong. But internally, as a team, we work as a mini startup. I say this to my team and the other teams also. They do the fantastic job. Be curious on the technology. Be one with the users. Understand their pain points. Apply the technology to address those pain points, and give the user a proof of concept to play with. Enhance it to fit their needs and other users, and challenges like that, and then update it so that customers are part of the development and they're aware of the tools, and most importantly, they know what they're working on. And I would strongly urge the audience of this podcast to leverage that too. So I understand everyone is busy, but many times you have to look at the perspective of, how can I make my workflow better, instead of continuing something just because I've been doing this for the last 10 or 15 years. Mm-hmm. It's funny, before joining Autodesk, on my startup days, I used to have a picture in my desktop. Every time I present it, that's come up. It's a good, nice, funny icebreaker before the meetings. It's a picture where it's a war scene. Bunch of soldiers are lined up on the one side with a spear or arrows in their hand, and there's a head of the army with a shining sword in his hand. Tells the person standing next to him, saying, "I don't have time to hear your technology pitch. I have a war to fight." And the guy next to him actually is holding a machine gun to help him win the fight. And it's a very funny thing when I first saw it, but imagine I'm just focusing only on what I'm doing, when a guy trying to give me efficient stuff to get my stuff done better, but I still ignore it and I keep doing what I want to do just because I'm busy. But I totally get you're busy, but I always like to take the customers, just look around for some time. The few minutes might be much, much more worth than what you think. So that's the one thing I would say. I would really request every single one of the listeners to this podcast to spend the next few minutes right after this podcast to email Rocco or Jim or Mike or me your thoughts, feedback, whatever. If it's a LinkedIn post, a reply message or something, even a single line to say hi. You never know what a single line like that could turn into in the future. And after doing that, forward this podcast to all your colleagues and friends who might enjoy, and ask them to do the same. I strongly believe, I think, like how ESRI and Autodesk, we're working together with the customers, we can do a lot more together. There's a whole lot of technology innovations out there waiting for us to uncover together. We're eager to get there.
Nice. I like that. And you're absolutely right. It is funny to me. It has always been funny to me about the people who just, I am so busy. I don't have any time to learn anything new that would stop me from being this crazily busy and unable to take time to learn something new. It's this vicious repeating cycle that you need to break out of. I think Ramesh is dead on with that. So, all right, folks. So I think on that note, we're going to get out of here. But as always, before we do, I just want to thank Ramesh and Michael for being here one more time. I mean, you guys are always great guests, and we genuinely appreciate that you are always willing to take time out of your very busy schedules to be here with us. So thank you so much for being here, guys.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always.
Thank
All
you
right,
both.
folks. We're going to bounce, but we will catch you next time on the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody. Today's Cattle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentech Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentech strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentech?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentechconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentechconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from you all.